If y'all have any questions while we're doing this, stop me. But like I said, solving absolute value equations are just like solving regular equations. Okay. When we go through this, I'll explain to you exactly what it looks like. When you get your homework is going to be online. So with that EDIA app, you'll have to log in, and I've linked it into your modules where you need it. So the first thing it says, remember the graph of absolute value function y equals x, absolute value of x. So remember, this is the same thing as x plus 0 plus 0. We have a slope of 1. So our vertex is at 0, 0, and we have a slope of 1. And since it's positive, it points up. So I just want to graph this real quick to show you. All right, so that's your function. And we're going to work a lot more soon, real soon, with those vertices. So if you guys didn't get that on the first test, which you can go back, y'all make sure that I have other attempts. If you didn't do as well as you thought on that first test, you can always go back, especially tomorrow would be a good day to retest if you need to, okay? Just if you retest, pop me an email and let me know that you did, okay? Just say, hey, I retested this, can you watch it, all right? The reason I tell you to email me, if you don't email me, it does not show up on my to-do list to grade because there's not really anything for me to grade. So it'll just kind of sit there blank. But I will make sure that I'm gonna write that down now to give you guys extra attempts for that. Extra 3. I can do that today. All right. So for y equals a absolute value of x, the value of a determines the width and direction for the absolute value graph. So if a is not 0, if a is greater than 1, then it's going to make it a vertical stretch like we talked about. So it'll make it skinny. If a is between 0 and 1, it'll make it fat. So it kind of flattens it out. It'll push it down. Okay. Remember, if it's a negative a, it flips it over the x-axis. Okay, so some things that maybe on that last test you need to know. I know there was like the negative 1/2 x squared. Some of you graphed as negative, as not negative, as positive. So it just has to be flipped over. And I tried to write as much as I can on there. But if you have any questions about that test or what you missed, just yell at me and I'll help you out. All right, remember absolute value is the distance the number is away from 0. For example, 3 and -3 both have a distance of 3 from 0. So here's what it's saying. If we have the absolute value of -3, the answer is 3. If we have the absolute value of 3, the answer is also 3. All right, so to solve absolute value equations, here are your steps, and we're going to go over them, so it's not a huge deal. You're going to isolate the absolute value on the left side of the equation. So if there's anything outside of absolute values, we need to get that to the other side. We're going to change it to 2 equations. Why do we change it to 2? Because the inside could be negative and the inside could be positive and give you the same answer. Okay, so what you need to understand is we're always solving 2 equations. Okay, and then step 3 is solve those equations. All right, so we'll do that on the next couple of examples. We also have some graphing so that you guys can see what it looks like on the graph as well. All right. So I'm going to solve it algebraically first, and then I'll graph it for you. The graphing is not important, but if you would like to use graphs, that is perfectly fine. Okay, so don't stress out too much about it. I do want to see your work, though. Okay, whether you graph it or whether you do this, and I do not want to see screenshots of Desmos. Are we clear on that? I don't know how many times I got to tell you. I do not want to see screenshots of Desmos. All right. So solve algebraically. It tells you to do f of x is g of x, and a lot of times on your final exam, they'll use this notation. All that means is take f of x and set it equal to g of x. So f of x over here, let me pull it up so you guys can see it, is absolute value of x minus 4. So I'm going to write it down like this. F of x is the absolute value of x minus 4, and g of x is 3. So it just says set them equal to each other. Okay. And again, you'll see that notation a lot on your final exam. All right, so our first step is to get absolute value by itself. There is nothing outside the absolute value bars on that right side. So we've done step 1. It's already done. So we're going to move on. After you do step 1, you're going to set up 2 equations. Those 2 equations are going to be, you take what's inside absolute values and you set it equal to a positive 3. And you set it equal to a negative 3. Again, the reason we do this is because the inside of this could be either negative 3 or positive 3, because when we take the absolute value, it's going to be positive. So don't worry about why so much. Just remember that you set up 2 equations. Now you just solve them like normal. How do I solve these? That's step 3. How do you solve this first equation? It's y'all. I mean, there's 4 people on here. What do? Add 4. I go ahead and do them both at the same time. And I only do that because they're both the same. And then I finish up with 3 plus 4 is 7. And negative 3 plus 4 is 1. So there are my 2 answers. That's it. All right, so step 1, get absolute value by itself. This one already was. Step 2 is make 2 equations. And step 3 is solve them. That's it. So what if I were graphing this? Okay, if I were graphing this equation right here, my A is 1, that means I have a slope of 1. It's positive, so it points up. And then my vertex, change the X, there's nothing on the end, is at 4, 0. Okay, so 4, 0, and up 1 over 1. So this is what your graph is going to look like for your absolute value. So this is f of x. G of x is 3. That's a horizontal line at 3. Where they cross is where my answers are. Where did they cross at? 1 and 7. We only want the x. Remember, we're just solving for x. It doesn't matter what the y is. So you can do it graphing, it's fine. Or you can just solve it, but I do not want Desmond screenshots. Okay. All right, look at your next one. And I assume that you're not going to graph it by hand, you're just going to solve it. Okay. Look at your next one. We're going to solve it algebraically. We're going to set them equal to each other. So f of x is negative 3, absolute value of x plus 2, and g of x is 2. So to get the absolute value by itself, treat this as this equation, negative 3x equals 2. How would I solve this equation? Do what? Nope. Divide negative 3. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's been a while since y'all solved equations. We're going to divide by negative 3. This is the same thing on this one because we're multiplying that 3 in, but we cannot distribute it. So I see a lot of people try to distribute it. Don't do that. Don't do that. All right, so those cancel out. We're left with the absolute value of x plus 2 is equal to negative 2/3. And remember, we're going to split it up. We're going to split it up now. Absolute value is by itself. So we make 2 equations, one positive 2/3 and one negative 2/3. So how do I solve both of these? Subtract 2. And like I said, I do them both at the same time. You can use your calculator. Remember, you get your calculator on your final exam the whole time. So -2/3 minus 2 gives me this ugly decimal. So I'm going to make it a fraction. And then 2/3 minus 2 gives me -4/3. So here's what I want to do. I want to graph it. I want to graph it. Your slope is -3. What does that tell you? It's going to be flipped over. And we're going to go rise 3, run 1, okay? Your coordinates, we're going to change the number with x to be a -2. And there's nothing on the outside, so a 0. So I'm going to graph that first. -2, 0. Down 3 over 1, and that's on both sides. It's going to look like this. So that's your f of x. G of x is at 2. What did you notice? They don't cross, right? So like on the last one, we got our answers, they cross, the 1 and 7. But on this one, they don't cross. Here's why they don't cross. None of this work is needed. None of this. At this point right here, can absolute value by itself ever equal a negative number? No, it's always positive. So this one is no solution. So how do I figure that out without having to graph it because I'm really lazy and I don't want to graph? You just plug your answers back into the original. So when I do this, I'll have -3. Remember, to get to absolute value, it's math and over to num. Instead of x, I'm going to plug in one of my answers, -8/3. Then I have a +2 and get out of that. Does that give me -2? What am I supposed to have? What am I supposed to have in the beginning? Yeah, look at this one more time, just so it's clear. -3, x plus 2 should equal +2. What did I get? So that didn't equal. So that can't be my answer. Okay, so once I plug it in, I should know. If I do -4/3, -3 minus -4/3 plus 2, that also gives me -2, which is not +2. So neither one of these will work when I plug them in. Okay, we're gonna do more. Don't stress out. I see your face. I like it. I like it though. So that makes me know I need to do more. All right. So one more time. If they cross, there's going to be solutions. If I plug this one back in, let's go back here and let me show you another plug-in that actually works, and maybe that'll help. I'm going to do absolute value. My first answer was 7 minus 4. Did that give me 3? You guys see that? It gave me 3, so I know that this one works. I can box it in. If I do it again, instead of 7, we got 1. It gave me a +3, so it works. Okay. Look at your next one. They just get a little bit bigger, that's all. So f of x is 1/2 x plus 1 plus 5. So we need to see if it's going to be equal to 5. So when we plug it back in, we should get 5. If we get 5, that means it's going to be the right answer. If not, then it's no good. Okay. I have to get the absolute value by itself. So what do I need to move first? Again, look at it as this equation, 1/2 x plus 5 equals 5. What would I do for that equation? Come on, girls. What would I do? Say it again. Not yet. Subtract the 5. Remember, we do what's not with x first. So we're going to subtract 5. Thank you for answering that. I really appreciate that. I get 1/2 absolute value of x plus 1 equals 0. So now we have 1/2 x equals 0. You would either divide by 1/2 or I flip and multiply. It's up to you, whichever one you want to do. I like to flip and multiply by 2. But again, if you want to divide by 1/2, that's fine. It's all the same. And that leaves me with the absolute value of x plus 1 is equal to 0. So that was step 1, get absolute value by itself. Step 1. The second one is make 2 equations where you have a negative and a positive. But what's special about 0? Do we have a negative 0 or a positive 0? It's just 0, right? So this one is only going to be one equation. So anytime that you see 0 happen, it's going to be one equation. It's just going to be x plus 1 equals 0. There's no such thing as a negative 0. You're solving the same equation. So it's pointless to do that. Okay. And then how do I solve for x? Subtract 1. And I get x equals negative 1. What I told you is if we can plug it back into the beginning and it equals 5, that's going to be our answer. So we had 1/2 absolute value. Instead of x, I'm going to put in negative 1 plus 1 and then plus 5. Did it give us positive 5? Then this is a solution. Okay. If I graph it, just reminding you of everything, our slope is up 1/2. It is positive, so it points up. Our coordinate to start with, change the x, keep the end. Change the x, keep the end. So we're going to go negative 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then we're going to go up 1/2. So it looks like this. Our g of x is 5. Look at where it crosses. So now you know why it only has one solution. It's because it only touches the vertex. And that x coordinate is negative 1. All right, so there's your 3 options. You can either have 2 solutions, you can have no solutions, or you can have 1. That's it, okay? So 2, 1, or none, you always need to check. The only way you're going to get one solution if it's equal to 0. So here's your rules. If absolute value is equal to 0, it's one solution. If it's equal to a negative, it's no solution. And that's the absolute value all by itself, okay? You got to get everything away from it. If it's equal to a positive number, it's 2 solutions. And one more time, that's when that absolute value is by itself, not in the very beginning, at step 2, at step 2. All right, so one more time, absolute value equal to 0 is one solution. Absolute value equal to a negative is no solution, and absolute value equal to a positive is 2 solutions. So when I set this one up, I want you to tell me how many solutions I should have. Okay. So our f of x is 2, absolute value of x minus 1 equal to 3. And you won't have to graph them on your homework. It's just solving them. Okay, so you'll need a separate sheet of paper to be able to solve them. So step 1 is get that absolute value by itself. So we're going to move the 1. We get 2, absolute value of x minus 1 is equal to 4. And then we're going to divide by 2. Four divided by 2 is 2. It is equal to a positive number. So how many solutions should we have? 2. Positive number, two solutions. How do we get those two? Now we split our equation up into a positive 2 and a negative 2. To solve both of them, we add 1, and like I said, I just do them all at the same time. And I get 3 and negative 1. Going to graph it for you and show you again how that works. We have a slope of 2. That means rise 2, run 1. It's positive, so it's pointing up. Your coordinate, your vertex coordinate is change x. Keep the end. So 1, negative 1. Our slope is up 2 over 1. And it's V-shaped, so we go to the other side perfectly. Like this. And then we cross at 3, our g of x. So here's your first coordinate at negative 1, and your other cross at 3. Any questions? All right. All right, I'm gonna do a couple more with you. I'm actually gonna go to the EDIA app that you guys are gonna use today. Sorry, looking at my notebook. I'm gonna stop this sharing, don't go anywhere. And you have solving absolute value equations right there. All right, so I'm gonna look at a couple of these. You have to get 10 correct answers. We're just gonna look at them real fast, just 1 or 2 of them. And I did this yesterday, so you guys can see. All right, this side. All right, it's gonna be weird, but I'll write it down so you guys can see. If you want to write this on your paper that you have, your notes, that's fine. Absolute value of negative 4x minus 6 plus 4 equals 18. I want to make sure that you guys know how to type it in and everything. There's not like the way this looks. There it is. Okay, I'll pull it back over in just a minute. First thing we want to do is get the absolute value by itself. So again, what I told you is kind of treat it like an equation like this. Just make your absolute value be x. What would I do to solve this equation? The longer you take the answer, the less time for homework.
Subtract 4.
Subtract 4. So I have absolute value of negative 4x minus 6 equals 14. I want to make sure that you know how to put your answers in and everything, so don't freak out that I'm just doing some of this. Hopefully, I do this as one of your questions. Once you get your absolute value by itself, this all by itself on that right side, on the left side, you're going to set up your equations. It's a positive, so that means there's going to be 2 solutions. Watch that first, check solutions, and then write your 2 equations. 4x minus 6 equals positive 14, and negative 4x minus 6 equals negative 14. You're going to solve them both the same way. We add 6. And like I said, I'll just go ahead and do them both together. (14 plus 6 is 20. Negative 14 plus 6 is negative 8. And then finish it out. Divide by negative 4. And you get x equals negative 5. And guys, watch your signs because you don't want to screw that up and that be the reason that you missed this answer. All right, so we got negative 5 and 2. So we go here. You can use this negative thing or you can just use your subtract or whatever. Negative 5. It doesn't matter which order that you put them in, and 2. And then you're going to check it. And if you get it right, they'll have the check marks. You've done EDIA already before, or it'll tell you what you did wrong. You have to do, what did I get? 10 correct. And I get 10 seems like a lot for absolute value because you're doing a lot of work. So it'll take you a while. Okay. Any questions on that? So your next question, I'm going to do one more. I don't want that one. Nope. Trying to find a good one. Don't look like any of these are bad questions. That doesn't mean that you won't have any bad ones. They all come out pretty. Huh. There we go. Well, that one's not even going to come out right either. All right. It doesn't look like any of them have zeros or negatives. So if you see one, I'll make one up real fast. Like this. Remember, we divide by 4. Make sure that you get the absolute value by itself first before you say, okay, it's equal to 0. Okay, now you can say there's only going to be one solution. So you would just do x plus 2 equals 0, subtract 2, and get negative 2. If you have let's do this. Let's make it a positive 2. No, I don't like that one at all. Ignore it. Three. Let's do 3. It's complicated, y'all, making your own equation. 3. That's a 3. All right. First thing that you would do is subtract that 4. So we get 2, x minus 6 equals negative 1. We divide by 2 to get our absolute value by itself, which gives us negative 1/2. At this point, the absolute value is by itself equal to a negative. So this one would be no solution. So just to give you a couple more examples of that. All right. So today, what you're going to do, I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. Today, what you're going to do, actually, I'm going to go back to that because y'all probably didn't have all that if you were trying to write it down. On your EDIA app, you have to get 10 right. So if you miss it, you're going to have to do another one to replace it. Okay. So it's not just 10 questions, it's get 10 right answers. So if you get 2 wrong, you need to ask me. Okay. So whether that's email or whatever, just ask me and I'll tell you what you're doing wrong. I can see the ones you miss and I can tell you exactly why you're missing them. All right. So that's why I like this app is I'm going to watch what y'all do while y'all are in here to see if y'all are doing okay. If you are, I'm leaving you alone. If not, I might ask some questions. If you're on Zoom and you have any questions, just make sure that you email me and ask, and that's fine. We can resume if we need to. Tomorrow, what you'll do, we'll still have a quick Zoom just in case. I know it's Wednesday and we don't typically have a Zoom. I'll do this. If I feel like we need to Zoom, I will record one. But for your attendance tomorrow, you have to do an equations, absolute value equations quiz. And I think it is 10 full questions. Now that one, if you mess it up, you don't get to try it again, okay? What I mean by that is on this one, if you get a wrong answer, it just regenerates it and you get to keep trying until you get 10. Tomorrow, it's like a for real quiz. You're gonna get 10 set questions. If you miss it, that's points off your grade. Does that make sense? Y'all got that? All right, so again, if I feel like we need a Zoom after looking at this, I will record one in the morning and post it in the announcements and say, these are some of the mistakes that I'm seeing on your homework. So just watch those when you do your quiz, all right? So stop sharing. Guys on Zoom, hang out just a minute. Those of you in here, you can go ahead and get your Chromebooks out and get to work on the assignment. When I call your name, you can go ahead and go. Anna, Carson, Hayden. Portland and Rachel. Thanks, guys. Oh, looking rough again.